Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the ISPMA webinar session on the career opportunities for software product managers in India. My name is Hans-Bernd Kittlaus. I'm the chairman of ISPMA, and I would like to welcome Vivek here, who is the VP and head of product management of the Indian office of Kony. Good morning or good afternoon, Vivek.
Hello, how are you today?
So before Vivek will speak about his own experience in software product management and the career opportunities, let me do a short introduction. My name is Hans-Bernd Kittlaus. I'm not only the chairman of ISPMA, but also the head of Innotivum Consulting. My background is in software, and my focus area is software product management. So I've done a lot of consulting work for large and small companies all over the world. And I've written a couple of books, the latest one, Software Product Management and Pricing. ISPMA is the International Software Product Management Association. That's a group of experts on the subject of software product management from both industry and academia. And you see quite a number of our fellow members here on this chart. So it's very international, very diverse, and very good group. And these guys are responsible for developing ISPMA's curriculum. Now I would like to introduce Vivek. Vivek is vice president of Kony and the head of the product management group at Kony's Indian office. Vivek, maybe you want to say a few words about yourself.
Sure, thank you. So yeah, my name is Vivek. I have been working in software product management and software consulting for about 12 and a half years now. Basically, I have a varied career. I mean, I have grown up working in several parts of India, and also I have spent a large amount of my professional life in the United States, specifically in the Boston area. And I have pretty much spent my entire career working with technical software products. And I have tried to blend sort of business acumen with technical complexity or technical details as we sort of work through a product manager's life cycle. So I'll explain more about this, as we get through later slides.
Okay. Do you want me to go to the next slide?
Sure, we can do that. Yeah. So without further ado, I'll sort of expand on what I just said as part of my initial introduction. So essentially, if you just look at my own personal evolution into product management, I started my professional career maybe about 12, 13 years ago now, in early 2004. And one of the first jobs that I took up was basically working with a software services provider here in Hyderabad, India, where we would actually work with products, software products. It was a provider that would provide engineering talent and engineering consulting for software product organizations as they are looking to scale up their business. So these are smallish software companies who want to grow up in scale. And they sort of needed a quick way to do that by getting the right amount of technical seniority and the right amount of technical leadership. So I started my career with them, and And as part of that, we work with several products, specifically in areas like enterprise content management, enterprise campaign management. And over the years, as we sort of gained experience with the product itself, I moved to the US. And initially, I would say in the first couple of years, I worked in several large Fortune 500 organizations implementing sort of these software products. So specifically, I spent a lot of time working in the enterprise marketing management domain, which is basically a domain where you try to map your marketing funding or marketing spend, or your marketing workflow or marketing campaign workflow in a software product in a manner that you can then check and see whether you have return on investment. So we deployed and did a lot of effective implementation consulting exercises with organizations like American Express, organizations like Warner Brothers, organizations like Delta Airlines, Wyeth Pharmaceuticals. So we did a good amount of work with these folks, and as it turned out, maybe in the first couple of years, I had my first exposure to product management in the sense that there was a scenario at American Express where we needed to quickly build a product feature because there was a rudimentary gap between what the customer wanted and what was there in the product. And usually, if people are sort of familiar with the whole software product lifecycle, we have the whole angle of customization. And you take a software product, you customize it, and you run with it. But sometimes just customizing is not the possible solution. What you end up doing is also, having to make the product better. So we had to create a version of the product. And I still remember it was version, say, 7.6. As we sort of created 7.6, we added a new workflow engine into the product itself. And that was my first dabble into the realm of product management. And that went quite well. It was a lot of fun. The bigger part is, product management. We were already talking to a lot of customers because it was a consulting exercise. But now you're not talking about one specific customer, right? You're not just worried about how will American Express take this, because American Express is just one customer. We were actually thinking it's broader now. We were not worried about just American Express. We were worried about the entire world, how the entire world will consume this particular feature. So that was a very different way of thinking, and it excited me a lot because now you had to go much deeper because you have to think for hundreds of people, not 20 people, right? So there's a definite change in thought there. So then as time moved on, I interacted with several other customers, and many of them we had to sort of build newer and greater features and so on. So that went on for about 5 years. Thereafter, I spent a year or so with a company called Neolane, which was subsequently acquired by Adobe, and it's now part of Adobe's Marketing Cloud. And the intent there was pretty simple. I think we were very small. There were like 20 people in Boston, in the Boston area, and we were working on trying to implement, again at enterprises. And again, the interesting part here was there was a lead management module. We had to sort of build several changes into the lead management module. And typically, lead management domain is something like when you're making an enterprise sale, right? A lot of times you actually do a marketing lead qualification. There's a lead scoring process. Say, for example, you attend a webinar or you go and attend a conference, you get certain points. So after the points add up and you get to a certain level, the lead is actually qualified and it turns over into a sales qualified lead, which would then mean that that sale would typically be tracked in a sales field automation tool like Salesforce.com or Siebel, as the case may be. So in a sense, that was a good amount of learning because you had to build tight integrations to these sales tools like SAP, Siebel, Salesforce.com. And at the same time, you had to author the whole algorithm for detailing out how the lead would be scored. again, a lot of fun stuff, again, very small organizations. Historically, worked with very small organizations. So, I've had a lot of freedom from my mentors to sort of take decisions and stick with those back decisions with data. And I'll come back to it in a little bit. But essentially, that was what I did. And that was, I would imagine, somewhere in the 2008, 2009 timeframe. And ever since, I've worked, in mobility. And primarily, again, I started my career at the current organization called Kony in, I would say, the summer of 2010. And I was pretty much working in the US. Again, I initially started for a year and a half, building products for enterprises, building solutions for enterprises. But as you may be well aware, as you work with very small organizations, right, what happens is the first few implementations don't go as a standard customization mode, which I was speaking about earlier. You generally find that there are several features that you have to build and think deeply about, especially for the first few implementations, because there are just a lot of gaps and, issues that you have to address. So we spent a lot of time working through that over the first year or two. And thereafter, what then happened is it transpired, and I would say in early 2011 or maybe even late 2011, I moved into a full-time PM role. And at that time, I think mobility was just blooming up. I think 2008 was the release of the iPhone, and Android had just started, picking up. So Kony as a product, what it basically does is it allows you to build mobile applications. It's a platform for building mobile applications such that you have one code base, you write one code base, and then you can build for several operating systems simultaneously, so that you don't have to really worry about coding or worry about, operating system specific behavior and all that. The tool handles that for you. So clearly, in 2011, you ran into a scenario where, many of the enterprises were not mobile yet, or they were just dabbling with the idea of providing mobile apps. So it became a very high growth phase for the company as we started thinking about how mobility can be leveraged. And companies wanted to build mobile apps for, iOS, Android, BlackBerry. At that time, even Windows Phone was just about getting into the market. And then we also built mobile websites. We also moved into building desktop portals and things like that. So there was a whole set of interesting initiatives that came up. And, as we sort of built the whole maturity cycle, it was very enlightening and fantastic to work in a very, high demand, highly volatile, dynamic market. And so that's where we started building versions and we matured the product. So about 2012 is when I sort of moved back to India, because the engineering organization for Kony runs out of Hyderabad, India, and here is where we sort of do all the sort of thinking and the R&D and all of that. So I joined the organization here and initially shipped out a bunch of products, particularly in the mobile device management, mobile security area. It was also sort of doing things in the mobile campaign management space. So that was a whole area of work that we dabbled in. And as time went by, what was happening was we wanted to sort of scale up the organization, do a lot more because there was value. So what happened was we started building a greater product organization. So if you talk about what was happening in 2012, we possibly had like 3-4 PMs, and there was like a 500-member engineering organization. A lot of the initial ideas were founder driven or C-level driven. But as the organization scaled, we needed to have a more clearer picture or a clearer deviation of product managers. So that was how sort of it went, and we had a US-based PM team which we built, and we also started building an India-based PM team. We introduced a lot of discipline into product planning exercises, which typically happens with organizations of scale. So if you talk about a startup, you probably don't have a rhythm. You say, okay, this customer wants this feature, you just release it as soon as you can finish building it. But as you sort of grow into scale and you are supporting hundreds of for thousands of customers, you start worrying about, figuring out a backlog, a roadmap, validating the roadmap. So we started going into this quarterly review cycle sessions where we would basically say, these are the things that we are building. And the product had also expanded. There's a front end, there's a back end, there's a packaged apps, so marketplace entity. And we started saying, these are the 4 sub products that we have under the Kony umbrella. And, this is the priority. And as we sort of, decided to build the organization, it made sense for us to say assign 2 or 3 folks per pillar of business. So this team, what it would do is basically focus on writing out specs in enormous detail, making sure that engineering is ultra comfortable. Almost in some sense, they would definitely play the product owner role if you're familiar with the whole Agile Scrum. And as time went by, we grew in other areas. So US was not the only market. We had huge sales in APAC, and we had huge sales in Europe and the EMEA region, South America. So scaling and supporting sales initiatives also became a little bit of a challenge from the United States just because of geographical constraints. As a result, this team, my team, started helping with a lot of sales, specifically in the Singapore region, or the Japan, Thailand, places like that. And all of this was very critical. So the organization sort of evolved from a core product owner angle to more of a sales facing team as well, where it would sort of work with customers and work with organizations. And also at this point, as we sort of achieved scale, I would say, maybe like a couple of years ago, maybe even in 2016, we started building the culture of data into the whole product stream, where now we were going to recommend, say, for example, if I'm adding this feature into my backlog, what is the value that feature is adding monetarily? What percentage of the market? Is it attacking the core market, or is it attacking an adjacent market space? Is it improving the productivity of the end user? Therefore, it is reducing cost of implementation. So we looked at just the monetary return on investment for every single feature. And in addition to that, we also started looking at things like what does it basically mean for us to build a feature in terms of data, right? So we always had data that we got from analysts like Gartner, Forrester, and the like, because we had a good relationship with them, and we've continuously sort of done very well in their magic quadrants and waves. So that was one good source of information. And in addition to that, we also had information flowing in from several customer interactions. But over the years, we started instrumenting our product as well. So typically, like how a B2C website runs at Flipkart or Amazon or any of these huge organizations, where there's like a wealth of data, and you do statistical modeling to figure out whether a particular product decision you're taking is effective or not. You do A/B testing. So we wanted to imbibe that culture. So now we are working on an effective plan where we get all this data and we recommend a particular feature. We don't usually just back it up by analyst feedback, customer interaction, qualitative feedback, personal experience, leadership vision, etc. We also have started imbibing culture of data heavily into this exercise. So that is something that my organization is also helping with. And typically, we also think about, my organization is also responsible for end-to-end view. So what that means is, for example, if you just look at the way the Kony organization is structured, it's a mobile application development platform where we have a front-end element, which we call as MADP, or mobile application development platform, or then there's like a back-end element, which is the traditional back-end as a service, or MBaaS. Then we have a packaged app section where we get a ready-made solution. You get a retail banking app off the shelf, or you get a field service app off the shelf. And then we have a vibrant marketplace where people, download stuff that they like, and people comment on stuff. There's community and so on and so forth. So as we were sort of building the product organization, a lot of these were running in silos. So what happened is, because we are here in India and we work closely with all these 4 pillars of engineering, we are now able to stitch together an end-to-end scenario, and we are able to keep everyone honest. So this team sort of becomes the gatekeeper of all quality, or not to lose track of the customer. Just because you're doing something deep in one pillar, you don't lose track of the customer overall. So that is how sort of the whole product organization has evolved. Typically, just being in the nature of the business, I think we look to hire people with a little bit of a technical bent of mind, because ours is ultimately, if you look at our customers, the customer persona we are tackling are sort of developers, JavaScript developers, or in some cases, they could be data-based folks, people who can model stuff. So this is a technical end user who's using our product. So we look for like a technical skill set, people who have maybe a background in computer science, or people who have a background in having spent a few years working in computer science driven software products. So that's how sort of we've been building a product organization, and we have a flavor of both business and technology, like I explained in a little while. So generally, I think those are sort of the first 2 points that you can see on the slide. Now, I think there's a question from Devang. Hans, should I answer the question now, or should we just take the question?
No, we take the questions at the end.
Okay, all right. So now moving forward, I think just looking at the cool areas for product managers to work on in the enterprise. And I'm just talking from an enterprise perspective, because I have spent 12, 13 years predominantly working in the enterprise space. So I think a lot of the interesting stuff, in my opinion, is focused on like maybe 2 or 3 different areas. I think the first thing is data. Now we are just getting a lot of data across the board. This, of course, has been true in the consumer space for a long time, with examples like Amazon and so on. But now I think data is also playing a large role in enterprises, and mediating, being part of the data exercise, so that you can be very targeted in your mobile application experience is very, very important. I think that is one area that all of us as product management professionals should be somewhat up to speed as to how your skill set can align with just the way data is evolving. That's number one. In addition to that, I think the growth of cloud, over the last maybe 5-6 years has been very promising. I think that there is just a lot of benefits to cloud. I think in an enterprise scenario, I think historically banking and other industries were worried that, my data is getting compromised, etc. How can I, work with data which is on the cloud? Is it secure? Things like that. But as we see more and more, cloud adoption is now happening rampantly in the enterprise. And the intention is for us to just ensure that, cloud will, because of all its benefit of auto scaling, of all its benefit of low cost, taking away the headache of infrastructure, I think understanding and playing with cloud is going to be critical over the next 3 to 4 years. I think we will slowly see that on-premise would be a much lower percentage in terms of just core enterprise deployments. And the third thing is mobile, right? I think mobile did see an enormous growth in the 2010, 11, 12 range. It's still growing very well, and now it's become very mainstream. Right now, everybody's talking about mobile app first, but predominantly, I think it's happened a lot in the consumer space. But if you look at the enterprise space, I would say that, if any of the attendees, if I were to just ask them how much of your day-to-day work are you doing on a mobile device, The answer probably would be, maybe 5-10%. I still need to go and sit on my laptop, or I still need to do these things manually. So there's just a lot of inefficiencies and, things that we can use mobility for that will drive a lot of the messages. So I think mobility in the enterprise is a pretty big deal. And I think over the next few cycles, we'll find like these three areas would be something that we should all be somewhat on the top of, so that we can, add value in the larger scheme of things. And sort of moving on to the fourth point, I think the question here is basically how do you keep measuring a product success, right? And this is very, very critical, right? I mean, how much is everything that you build, in my view, over the last 12, 13 years, you need to keep measuring how much are people using the product, what is the adoption metric, what is the monetization metric. So you need to continuously think about a feature that you have added. How will you measure it after it's GA as to the effectiveness? Are people using it? If they are not using it, why are they not using it? Has the cost of implementation come down because you've added that feature of, say, it's reuse or whatever it may be? So therefore, it's very important for us to always build a feature keeping in mind as to how you will measure the success of that particular, product. And also, I mean, just keeping up to speed with competition, is very, very important. In my view, I think 2017 is very interesting. These are excellent times to be working in the software field. And the reason is there are just a lot of young people, a lot of companies doing very cool stuff and, game-changing stuff. And as a result, not only in the US, but in India, in China, in a whole host of markets. So it's very interesting to see what people are doing, trying to learn from them, making sure your roadmap can address and fulfill some of those scenarios. So it's very, very interesting, and continuously we just have to keep ourselves honest about what the competition is doing, learning from them, potentially staying one step ahead of them all the time. So that's going to be very, very critical, especially as we look at these nimble startups that have sort of come up in all kinds of spaces, not just mobility. It's true for any kind of space today. And finally, I'll just specify a word or two about just software pricing. And I think Hans himself has written a couple of books on this, so he may know much more than me. But I think I would just say software pricing is very interesting, right? I think what we need to sort of keep in mind is more and more people are sort of moving into like a SaaS model, a cloud model, where they want to pay like a subscription per month, per year. And the way we would usually say is, make sure that you don't have like licenses that are sort of typically perpetual. Usually perpetual means you're giving people access to the software forever, and you then charge a maintenance. I think that model, in my view, is sort of taking a back seat. Predominantly because as a company, you need to be very clear about how much money you're going to make every cycle. And it's very critical in that sense for you to be aware. So a more clearer view on a subscription-based revenue is far easier for you to work through. And in addition, I think I would just say, just preparing to price your software, you should always know sort of what your core costs of the engineering are. And then appropriately, you should look at what your number of sales are for that particular year. And imagine that what are the costs and overhead, and then you should just price your software based on those core elements. So that's sort of the thing that would help as you sort of work through just a pricing exercise. I think pricing in general is a fairly complicated space, but it's important that a PM always keeps thinking about it. How much money am I making? Is the money too much for the person to pay for? I mean, am I charging too less? Am I charging too much essentially? So all of that is something that you have to dabble and play with in due course. So I think those are the few points I did want to cover as part of this presentation. I'll just hand this over back to Hans, and then we'll take the questions towards the later part of the conversation.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Vivek, for your excellent presentation. That was most interesting. Before we go to the questions, let me say a few words about ISPMA and the content that ISPMA provides. At the core of ISPMA's curriculum is the SPM framework that you see here. The core of software product managers' tasks are the columns product strategy and product planning. So that's the direct responsibility of a product manager. On the left side, you see the column strategic management. That's where that's what's happening on a corporate or business unit level. And sorry. And on the right side, you see the functional units of the software organization that need to be orchestrated by the product manager. So the idea behind this framework is that you see the whole spectrum of tasks of a product manager on one page, and we use that for structuring our trainings, and we also use this in our consulting work, where this is a good basis to sort out how a particular company can organize in order to be successful with its products. The curriculum of ISPMA looks like this. We have a foundation level. That's a 3-day training that's intended to give the full overview over the framework. And then based on that training, there are the so-called excellence level trainings that look at these parts of the framework. So there's one on product strategy, one on product planning, another one on the strategic management, that was the left column of the framework, and then one on orchestration. There is certification based on exams for all these modules. And that's what is provided through independent certification agencies. We will conduct a first foundation level training in India next week, actually. It's January 20th to 22nd. I will travel to India. My partner Devang Taka will be there, and we'll do the training in Bengaluru. There will be more trainings, and you can see the complete list of ISPMA-based trainings here on the ISPMA website. My company is Innotivum. So Innotivum is a consulting and training company. We provide consulting on software product management in terms of concepts, in terms of processes and organization, and we help companies to implement these processes and to improve their software product management work. And we also provide trainings based on ISPMA, like the one that we are going to do next week. With that, I would like to go to the questions and answers. We have a couple of questions, Vivek. So let me start with one. You have quite a lot of experience in the US and also in India. Do you see any differences in the way that software product management is done in the US versus India?
Hi, Hans. That's a good question. I think I'll just say, I think if you just look at the way software product management has evolved, I think it's comparatively a newer phenomenon in India than what it was in the United States and other countries. just because the nature of the way, because India was initially quite a services-based IT realm, and products were sort of not as much in the fray of the net revenue pie. But I think over time things are sort of catching up, and I think the gap is much smaller now. At my own organization, right, I think the way the PMs work is not very dramatically different in the way they work in the US and they work in India. So I think currently it all depends, in my view, in the US there's a lot of, still a large percentage of the customers, the US folks have a little bit more sort of outbound customer interactions possibly. But I would say India also, we are doing a lot now with the APAC market growing, etc. So I think to answer your question in short, it would say that initially 10 years ago the gap was much wider, but now as the market is growing, and India itself has its own sort of startups like Flipkart and InMobi and all these places. You have a much richer talent, and I think the gap is decreasing over time.
Mm-hmm. I understand that you are looking for additional product managers in your organization. So when you look for talents, what are the criteria that you use? Is education, for example, one of them? So would you say that something like an ISPMA certificate could improve the chances of a candidate?
No, of course, I think that is absolutely a good idea. I think the way I look at it, I think certifications help because they help you think about the way you approach product management. There is an order and an organization in which you start thinking. So definitely, ISPMA would help. In addition to that, I would also say, when I look, at least for my team, no matter what domain you're working in, whether it is a technology platform like Kony, or whether it is e-commerce, or whether it is video streaming, whatever you're trying to sell, I think it's very important for you to understand the persona who's consuming your software, the end user. You need to be very, very clear as to what the experience the end user is. So for me, that is very important. So if there is experience that is relevant in the past that the person has worked on, say as a mobile developer, I consider that as a very high value item. In addition to that, if they also have, value or business education, that helps a lot, especially with things like understanding the sales process, understanding market size, doing product planning. So there is, I also pay good emphasis on a combination of historical, technical experience and people who want to sort of move to a business line of thinking. Because as we sort of are growing, we're also sort of moving into more of a P&L model and things like that. So yeah, I mean, to answer your question, I think I would just say a techno business person is ideal, and I think having the right kind of certifications is generally very helpful because that takes this techno business individual and introduces an organization and a pattern of thought in their mind, which is very beneficial.
Thank you, Vivek. You talked about all these small startup companies in India that have come up over the last couple of years. The question that we have from Devang kind of relates to that. So his question is, what kind of skills do Indian product managers need to evolve from making domestic products to global products that can compete with the caliber of products coming out of Silicon Valley or other hubs in the West?
Of course. So that is a very interesting question and good, I think. So I think the way it will work, in my view, is, it is just an evolutionary process. I mean, historically, like I said, the gap has been immense, and of late it is sort of narrowing, but it's still there's a good amount of ways to go. I think in terms of what skills, like I said, focusing on data, focusing on things like mobility, cloud, at least in the enterprise space, there are a few such elements, technologies being on top of that, and being able to sell effectively through the cloud as much as possible. The reason a lot of the US companies also succeed is because predominantly the market is also there, right? So if you're like an Oracle or your Salesforce.com, I mean, you have to sell to somebody who's like in the same country as you are. So therefore, the products also sort of churn. But if there are products that can help the Indian ecosystem, you'll find that, those companies will also sort of help blossom skills. So I think in summary, I would just say that the skill gap between the US PM and the Indian PM organization is narrowing. I think in the consumer space, India is beginning to come up with some very interesting and very quality products. And in the enterprise space, I think there are still a couple of examples, Freshdesk and all that, who are doing very well in the cloud mode. And I think it's just an extrapolation as the market matures even within India. If you're able to sell effectively within your own ecosystem, you'll find that more products will come through that exercise. And, you just don't have to like depend on one market. Essentially, you can sort of try to grow in other markets.
All right. Thank you very much, Vivek. That was most interesting. I appreciate you joining us for this webinar. If you, the audience, have any questions, want to get more information about ISPMA, you can find that on the ISPMA website. You can also contact Devang or myself. And we are making recordings of webinars available. You can find a link to these recordings on the Innotivum website, and we will also make this webinar available. So thank you very much, and hope to see you soon. Thank you very much, Vivek, for your most interesting presentation and answers to the questions. And I wish all of you a nice day. Bye-bye.